Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646. Friday mornings is something different on 89.5 FM. It's JP's Talk About Town.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University. This is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield.
Oh, gee, couldn't be sillier. You look kind of familiar. Oh,
Good morning, everyone. This is Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auer, back here on 89.5 FM WSKB. That little Charleston number in the background is from an election season musical called Jimmy that opened in 1970. The story of New York Mayor James Walker. And that's Anita Gillette singing to James Walker, who was played by Frank Gorshin. Jimmy the musical lasted a handful of performances. James J. Walker, the mayor of New York, lasted for a lot more. And so there's your election show tune for this Friday morning. We've got a great show for you today. A lineup of, which I realized as I was driving in, two people that work in theaters that were once movie theaters and now have been made into stage theaters. Our first guest this morning is Danny Eaton from the Majestic Theater. And later on in the program, we'll be talking with Don Sanders, who is spearheading the drive to renovate and restore the Victory Theater in Holyoke. But first to Danny Eaton. Good morning, Danny.
Good morning, Mark.
I know that your season has already opened with a musical called Johnny Guitar, and that the next play on the docket, which I assume is in rehearsals right now, is a play that you wrote. So what is it like being a playwright directing your play for the stage?
Well, it's a little bit of a challenge. You switch hats all the time, and I'm used to that as producing director at the Majestic. I'm constantly switching hats, and so I guess it's not that unfamiliar to me, I'd say.
But you as the director have to say to you as the playwright, we need to fix that, we need to do that. And you as the playwright need to tell you as the director, no, that's my intent. Does it get difficult? Is it more of a challenge to direct your own work than it is to direct somebody else's?
I don't think so. We've got in this play in particular, we got a really terrific group of actors, and we're always learning from them, and as we go through that rehearsal process and see what they discover, and we see what doesn't quite work, and so every day at rehearsal, there's some little tweak to the script, there's some little change that we work out, and in terms of just refining things and getting ready to put it in front of an audience.
Did you write the play with any particular actors in mind?
No, I never do that, really.
And I understand, at least from the press release and some of your promotional materials, that the play, which I hope you describe a little bit, is based on some of your family experiences. Yeah,
that's true. It was kind of family stories that I grew up with as a kid, about particularly about my grandparents and some of my uncles and World War II, and the sort of a fan of the history of the war, and of course my dad and my uncles were all involved in the war, and really the genesis was, in my dad's family there were 4 boys, so it was a house full of guys, who were athletes and fishermen and hunters and that kind of thing, right? And the war came along, and all 4 of them went into service. And before they shipped out for overseas and combat. All 4 of them got married and sent their new wives back to my grandfather's house for the duration of the war. So the house just kind of flipped, as it were, went from all men to all women. And the family joke was that my grandfather was just damn lucky to survive the war.
When did you start writing the play?
In earnest, I think maybe 2 years ago. And I just kind of cherry-picked things, little events that I was aware of, or, my dad had talked about, or my uncles had talked about, or my grandparents had talked about, cherry-picked kind of things, and found a way to kind of integrate them into a narrative of one day in the spring of 1944. And, it's just a kind of interesting little tidbits that always fascinated me. I remember stories about my grandmother doing black market deals with a local Mother Superior, trading gas coupons and things like that,
So would you define the play as a comedy, drama? How does it work out when the household switches from 4 guys to 4 women?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think I think of it as a comedy slash drama. There's some dramatic things in there, and there's some comic things in there. It's really kind of a slice of life, kitchen table kind of play. The play itself takes place in one day, over the course of one day in the spring of 1944, and starts first thing in the morning with coffee and ends late at night.
And who are some of the people that are involved in the production? I know that you bring back a lot of the same actors and designers all the time, almost like a resident company.
In a sense, yeah. There's a really great pool of actors around the valley here, and they'll find their way onto our stage. And in this cast, that's true. And then there's always try and bring in new people, find new actors, and they seem to find us when we hold our big round of auditions in June of each year. So yeah, it's a good mix in the cast.
We should probably go through and tell people what the upcoming season is, beginning with your play and going through your annual Home for the Holidays and then on into the winter and spring. Can you preview some of the shows?
Yeah, sure. So the War Wall Whipple opens next week, opens on the 1st, and that'll run for 6 weeks. And then our annual holiday show, which runs for a week and a half, leading right up to Christmas. And then right after the New Year, I think January 3rd it is, we open The Mountaintop, a really amazing play about Martin Luther King's last night on Earth, set at the Lorraine Motel. It's really a brilliant play. And, Martin Luther King is such an iconic figure, and I think that's how most people kind of know him or know of him. It's just this icon. And in the play, you get to see not only the icon, but the real man underneath that. So it's a wonderful play. And then in March, it's Boing, a really funny French, originally a French farce about a fellow who's an architect who has an apartment in Paris, somewhat close to Orly Airport, and he has 3 fiancées who are all airline hostesses, and from different airlines in different countries, actually. And he's arranged their rendezvous around their flight schedules, and so one flies in and he meets her, and then she flies out, and another one flies in and he meets her, and of course one day all the schedules get changed, and they all show up, and it's like, pandemonium. So
that's one of those famous farces with the door slamming and.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
a lot of doors slamming in that play. Yeah. And then let me think. What the heck's the close of our season? The Marvelous Wonderettes. It's a terrific little 4-character play about 4 high school girls who get recruited to sing for their high school prom. And that's all sort of 50s, 60s kind of music and, sort of a jukebox musical. And,
so it's a musical.
Yeah. And in the second act, they come back 10 years later to sing for their reunion, their 10-year reunion. And so we move to a different, the next decade in pop music. So fun little play.
So for people that have never been to the Majestic, it's in a great little neighborhood in West Springfield, a couple of nice restaurants around it and all. You have a cafe in the theater itself, correct?
We do, yeah, which is really very popular. We do get people who will show up an hour before the showtime for sure, and they can get a glass of wine or coffee and cake or soup and a sandwich, that kind of thing. Very kind of low key kind of atmosphere, but it fills up. It really gets crowded before the show starts.
Danny, when did you acquire the Majestic Theater? And I know that it had been a movie theater before you all took it over. When did you get it, and what did you have to do to renovate it and make it a stage theater?
Yeah, well, the building itself, the movie house, was from 1921, and unlike the Victory in Holyoke, you're going to be talking with Don rather. This was just a small town movie house. There wasn't anything particularly architecturally significant about it, and it wasn't a huge building to begin with. And it closed up, I think, in 1980, in the early 80s, and the building was essentially chopped in half. And what was the auditorium got left empty. It ended up being a collection point for carpet remnants and junk office furniture and things like that. And the front portion of the building was converted to commercial office space. So there were 2 office spaces on the first floor and 2 above it on the second floor, and the original auditorium just sat empty. And that was the space that we took over in 1995. And it took us about 2 years to do the renovation and get the door open for our first season, for our first production, and then our first season. And that was in 1997.
So you're at 21 years now in that space.
Yeah, we're in our 22nd season right now. Yep.
What were you involved with theater before that? Was there a theater company before the Majestic became a reality?
Yeah, well, our corporate entity is called the Theater Project, Inc., and we were performing a few years before that in kind of local spaces, primarily in a church hall, which was across the street from the Majestic. And while we were doing shows there, at the same time we were renovating. So we've been going since, I think, 92, when we first incorporated.
And what made you decide to go into theater?
Oh, geez. Well, I think that, one day, many years ago, I happened to write a play, and when I was in college, and as a writer, I'd been primarily focused on short fiction, and happened to write a play. Don't have any idea why I wrote a play, but I wrote a play which really wasn't very good, I have to say now. But it got produced, and I was struck by the immediacy of the feedback. If you write short stories and you're sending them out to get published, you write a short story and send it out to a magazine or something like that. It might be 3 months before you hear anything, or before you get the rejection letter, and with the play, all of a sudden, boy, you've got an audience right there, and the feedback was so immediate, and I was really struck by that, and said, well, I think that's what I'm going to write from now on, and that's kind of what I've done.
How many plays have you written in over the years?
Oh boy, I don't even, probably 18, 19, something like that.
And have all of them made it to the stage, or are there some that you put aside at one point and said, I'll get back to that one later?
No, I've been really fortunate in that all of them have gotten produced in one way or another, and some of them have got produced a couple of times, and I had a New York kind of off-Broadway production, and had plays produced in New York, and at colleges, Penn State and UMass and Amherst and things like that. So they've all gotten produced. So that's been very, very fortunate in that regard.
It's one thing to be able to write your own play and produce it in your own theater. Is it a unique experience seeing it produced somewhere else?
It is. One of my plays. This is also a World War II kind of play about a story about Eddie Slovik, who was the only American soldier executed for desertion in World War II. He was going to be made an example of, and no sooner was he executed, and then the entire his court case and the entire execution got classified. And I stumbled upon a book many years ago about that case, and ended up with Ted Kennedy's help actually going down to Virginia to some archive in Virginia and getting permission to go and research that whole case, and wrote that play. And then it got produced in New York, and got produced at Amherst College. It was like my thesis production there, and where else? Holyoke Community College did it. Wilson did it, and there's somebody else that did it. So that was interesting to see how different people approach the play, and the different levels of production in terms of skill and professionalism and that kind of thing. So that was a very different experience.
We're talking with Danny Eaton from the Majestic Theater in West Springfield. We are going to take a very brief break to acknowledge underwriters of community programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB. Later in the program, we'll be talking with Don Sanders from the Massachusetts International Festival of the Arts, the people behind the restoration and the renovation of Holyoke's Victory Theater. And coming up next week on Arts Beat Radio, we'll be chatting with John Montanari, who is the former voice of classical music at New England Public Radio. He is the artistic director of Valley Classical Concerts, which presents chamber music up and down the valley. And we'll be talking with Deborah J. Anthony, who is the executive director of the Academy of Music Theater in Northampton. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies, rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Commercial Distributing Company of Westfield. Now in its third generation of family ownership, Commercial is one of the premier beverage distributors of Western Massachusetts. The Plasek family and the staff of Commercial Distributing wishes you good times throughout the year and urges you to drink responsibly. We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646. Friday mornings is something different on 89.5 FM. It's JP's Talk About Town.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from the campus of Westfield State University, this is 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Arts Beat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our engineer this morning. We're talking with Danny Eaton from the Majestic Theater. He's written a play which is in rehearsal right now and about to open. And Danny, for people that are interested in getting a schedule of what's going on at the Majestic this year, what's your website?
It's majestictheater.com. Theater spelled ER at the end. I mean, there's always that confusion, you know. If you go Majestic Theater with THEATRE, you're going to end up in Texas somewhere.
Yeah, you're going to end up in San Antonio. Because I made that mistake the other day, quickly typing on a tablet that didn't save my favorite places or anything like that. And there are a lot of Majestic theaters around. But you're the only one that does live theater in West Springfield.
That's true.
So the Home for the Holidays, which is the annual gathering of regulars from the Majestic Theater, that takes place after your show closes. Does that show change from year to year?
It changes in the sense that we'll bring in different cast members. I mean, we have this core group, Ray Gillette Jr. and Ben Ashley and Mitch Shapiro is part of the band. So there's that core group there. But then, we bring in different actors and actresses and singers from shows over the year. Like Micah Plunkett will be joining us this year. She was Vienna in Johnny Guitar. And we generally try and bring somebody back from our open mic series during the summer. And so there are different guests coming in.
Have you ever repeated a show over the course of, aside from the Home for the Holidays, ever repeated a show over the course of 22 years?
Yeah, we have. Well, we've done the Buddy Holly story several times. I think 4 different productions of that now. And one other play we've repeated, and that was Blood Brothers.
In your list of plays that you're considering for upcoming seasons, do you have a wish list of plays that you could do given the resources?
I wouldn't say it's a wish list. I recently saw on Broadway The Play That Goes Wrong, and I've seen it now 3 times, and kind of chomping at the bit to be able to do that play. Although I know in the Majestic that'll really be a stretch for us. Are you familiar with that one?
I just saw it in Hartford. The national tour of that opened in Hartford a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was a funny play, but the way the set fell apart when these things dropped and all of that, I was astounded that they could do that on stage, but even more astounded by the fact that the timing of the performers were because if anybody was a second off, they'd be hit by a piece of flying scenery.
Exactly. I mean, it's a funny play, but all those timing things and things falling off the walls and the set collapsing and it's just I think a remarkable kind of a technical achievement which for Broadway is not so surprising because, things happen on Broadway, scenic elements flying in or moving in or sliding in or, rising up from the floor. That's pretty standard on Broadway.
It is, but when you take a show like that and you put it on tour, and Hartford was the second stop of the national tour, and you're going from theaters that are different sizes and different shapes, and you only have a couple of hours, really, the day that the show moves in to rehearse in the new space. It's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think it is a pretty remarkable challenge, especially with that play. Well, any of those tours, for sure, but with that one, it's so specific.
And when I got to the theater that night, before the show actually starts, there's a couple of stagehands pounding away with hammers and stuff. I did not realize it was part of the show. I thought, oh my gosh, this show has come in. They arrived late, and they're never going to be set up and ready to go by 7:30. And it's getting on 7:25, and these two frantic stagehands are hammering and trying to set things up and all. And when I finally dawned on me as the lights went down and the curtain came up that this was part of the pre-show, it was so incredibly clever.
Roaming around looking for his dog.
Yeah, there was that, and then they dragged somebody up from the audience, a tall guy, and they said, "Could you hold this for us and hold this set piece in place?" And I thought by the end of the first act we had seen everything that show was going to offer, and the second act, when part of the set collapses, I just was taken away. And afterwards, as I was writing the review, I went and looked up some of the background on the show and realized that it did win a Tony Award for its set, and whoever that designer is, his or her name escapes me now. That was brilliant.
What I did, I had our resident designer, Greg Truffle, go down and see the show just to see if he thought we could bring it off at the Majestic, and he did, but it would take a lot more time, I think, in terms of not only the build but just the rehearsal process of integrating all of those things. So it would be a bigger production for us in that sense,
Danny, thanks for joining us this morning. I hope you came and chatted with us one day last winter when we were in the midst of a blizzard. And as I look out the window here, we actually have a sunrise. And it looks like it's going to be a nice day. But I hope you come back again and let us know how your play went and what it felt like seeing a play that you wrote and you directed. When you sit there in the audience opening night, I want to know what it felt like seeing it come to fruition. So I hope you'll come back and join us.
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, we're going to take another break here because we have underwriters to acknowledge. Then we'll be back with Don Sanders, and we're going to talk about the Victory Theater in Holyoke. And just to let you know, we got some interesting guests up and coming, and some of the people that you'll want to tune in for. We have Storm Large, who's the singer with Pink Martini, and she's tours the country all the time with her band. She's from Southbridge, Massachusetts originally. She's got a Christmas show called Holiday Ordeal, which will be at the Fine Arts Center Concert Hall at the University of Massachusetts. And she'll be joining us. And then this guy had listened to Artsbeat Radio on Facebook. And he is the author of a brand new book about the director and choreographer for both stage and screen, Bob Fosse. And the book is called Big Deal, Bob Fosse in the American Musical Theater. And Bob Fosse directed and choreographed Damn Yankees, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, Pippin, Sweet Charity, the movie All That Jazz, the movie of Cabaret, and this book, this Kevin Winkler, the author, who is a former dancer, sent me a review copy of the book to take a look at, and it's fascinating, so I can't wait to talk to him about the life and times of Bob Fosse. This is Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. We'll be back after a couple of announcements.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org. Underwriting for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Westfield, serving the youth of the Whip City and surrounding communities since 1969. For more information on the Great Futures Club for ages 3 to 5, happening weekdays, and the Club Teen Center for ages 11 and older, weekdays from 6:30 till 8 p.m., go online at bcgwestfield.org or visit the club at 28 West Silver Street. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Westfield. Great futures start here. We thank the generosity of our underwriters. For more information, please contact the Westfield State Foundation at 413-572-8646.
Thursday morning from 6 till 8, it's Patrick Berry, owner of the Westfield News Group,
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University, this is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone, to Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. We're talking for the next half hour with Don Sanders from the Massachusetts International Festival of the Arts, which is affectionately known as MIFA. Don Sanders has been involved raising the money to restore and renovate Holyoke's Victory Theater. Now, just a little backgrounder. The Victory Theater opened in 1920, and like a lot of the theaters in Western Massachusetts, was primarily a movie theater that also hosted vaudeville. And it closed in the late 1970s after showing second-run movies. It's in downtown Holyoke, and it's been sitting there. And there was a group of people that wanted to restore it and renovate it and bring it back to mint condition. And it was a beautiful theater in its day. And Don Sanders and the people at MIFA got involved about 10 years ago and started a major fundraising effort to restore and renovate and protect the theater that's sitting there now. So welcome, Don.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be talking with you, and thank you for that really super introduction.
How did you get involved in the Victory?
It goes back to the founding of the festival, which was looking at a Pan-Valley identity, performing in various venues around the valley. And I was introduced to the folks that were had the glint in their eye about the Victory, and I believe it was 1994, 95. And I thought, wow, this is going to be such a great addition to the venue scene in the valley at that point, because it is a 1,600-seat Broadway-style theater. And it was something that we didn't really and don't have until it opens in the valley. And we did some early programming there. Actually, in the lobby, we brought in the great American tenor Robert White, who did a program of American songs up in the Oval lobby of the Victory. And we brought in a grand piano up there, etc. It was great fun. And so as we moved along with the festival, it also became kind of in the back of my mind, what is the progress on the restoration of the theater? And in 2001, when we had a strategic grant to look at the next 10 years of the festival, which highly recommended that we look at some of the venue issues that we were facing, etc., we focused again on the Victory, and that began what has been a remarkable adventure.
I was going to say, because I remember at least 10 years ago, there was this announcement that if you could secure a certain amount of funding, the theater would open in a year or two.
Right.
And then every year, you'd be out doing a fundraising effort, and the price tag, obviously, to renovate the theater was going up and up. But you had to spend a lot of money just to secure what was there.
Yes, absolutely. We began, actually, the effort in 2005 to look at what the cost would be, what the viability, et cetera, what the sustainability of an open theater could be. And that was a long process, which involved, among many other things, having a historical evaluation of the building, et cetera. And in 2009, we felt pretty strongly about a plan that could actually result in a successful reopening. And from that point on, yes, the expenses were in doing the research and putting together the plans, for example, to receive designation from the Massachusetts Historic Commission, which, quite frankly, and my hat goes off to them because I think it's great that they are so thorough. You basically present what the ultimate plan will be, i.e. architectural drawings, et cetera, and of course all of that involves money and hiring experts to talk about the various aspects of the theater. Then there were some emergency repairs, such as a couple of roofings. The roof has been very problematic at the Victory because it was built with internal gutters, which was an attractive thing in 1920. That means that the gutters, instead of having those outside pipes, went inside of the building and went into storm drains, and that, of course, caused a lot of internal leaking, et cetera, et cetera. So there have been expenses, but they've been very modest, actually, in terms of, I think, what the ultimate facility will be, which will be very, very, very beautiful. You used the word beautiful earlier. I wrote it down because it's the way I feel about the theater. And I have to share with you that on Wednesday, I and the architects and contractors, et cetera, who are now hammering and tonging away at beginning the process, we visited the Emerson Colonial Theater in Boston, which has been taken over by Ambassador Theater Group on a 40-year lease. And they've done quite a lot of restoration and renovation to the theater, which opened with the out-of-town tryout of Moulin Rouge. And that was really inspiring, Mark, to see what a theater, the Colonial was earlier than the Victory. I believe it's 1900. But, to see the beauty of a restored piece of architecture is very inspiring, and how it can be used. So it's a very exciting process, but very complicated.
Well, I would assume it is very complicated because there are other historic theaters around the country that are trying to do the same thing or have done the same thing that you're trying to do. The Colonial, of course, being a landmark of Broadway, tryouts and all that. I remember seeing several shows there as a kid. I went to college in a town in New Haven where the Schubert Theater had been a landmark, and that fell apart and was boarded up basically when I was at school. Now it's reopened. When the Victory reopens, and I've heard you say 2020 is the projected reopening date, what kind of programming will go into the Victory that will be unique to it?
It will have a diverse program, which will include 6 to 8 touring Broadway musicals, because the theater is able to handle those kinds of productions. And that will be then also joined to what we're calling festival programming, which will involve very selected theater, opera, dance, and special events internationally, for which MIFA has gained a reputation over the past few years in the Valley. And it will also house local projects, ranging from the Holyoke High School annual musical, which will be thrilling for the students to actually do a Broadway musical in essence, a Broadway theater, and a variety of projects that can range from individual music acts to comedians. And one of the programs that we've been looking at for a long time is an 11 o'clock Saturday morning cartoon program for local young people. So it'll have a variety of very, we hope, and are projecting exciting programming that will appeal to people around the valley, and also will attract visitors to the valley. We've found that some of the international events that we've been able to bring in have attracted, of course, audiences from Boston and from Hartford, New Haven, etc. And that's also a goal.
Well, if you look west of Holyoke or west of the valley into the Berkshires, Barrington Stage and Berkshire Theater Group at the Colonial have basically been the foundation for the Renaissance of Pittsfield.
Yes.
There are theaters in Springfield, Symphony Hall, City Stage, and the possibility of the Paramount being renovated and brought to code. That could certainly contribute to Springfield's future, and you have the Calvin and the Academy of Music in Northampton. What will the impact be on Holyoke, and will Holyoke be able to provide the amenities from parking to restaurants to make the Victory a destination?
Yes, well, it's very important, Mark, the point you make about the other venues, all of which I'm very familiar with in the Valley and really admire and like. We have a great array of other venues ranging from Symphony Hall in Springfield to the Academy of Music. They all have specific size advantages and also limitations. And what the Victory has is the fact that it is, in essence, a Broadway-style theater, which has fly space, wing space. We are extending the rear of the stage by 8 feet and adding considerable space for dressing rooms and expanding the orchestra pit so that it will actually hold quite a large orchestra, both on the stage and also in a pit, for example, to accompany opera, or one of the dreams I have is acoustic Broadway shows, such as Glimmerglass is doing. But the downtown Holyoke is in need of the Victory. There has been, over the years that we've been in Holyoke, a tremendous expansion of the arts and creative economy in Holyoke. I think there's a wider appreciation of how unique the city is. And parking, we have already extant the parking that we need for a 1,600-seat theater. There's a public parking garage 2 blocks from the theater, and parking space on the street right around the theater. We are looking at the impact of the theater and working now that we are closer and closer to the opening on how to attract other kinds of amenities, as you say, such as restaurants, and create an atmosphere where people will want to be there in addition to going to the theater.
Well, I would assume that, Holyoke has become a magnet for the creative economy. The cost of housing is cheaper in Holyoke. The studio space in some of the old mills and factories is available. In fact, a new community theater did a production, Sweeney Todd, last week. And, and there's this interest in turning it into an arts community and stuff like that. So obviously the Victory will be a centerpiece of that. Do you see the Victory as becoming a magnet for other performing arts groups to want to be in Holyoke?
Yes, and that's a very important part of the business plan and the strategic model that we've been working on since 2014, which was prepared by Tim Lazinski, a well-known Broadway producer of Something Rotten, for example, who was brought on to do our strategic business plan by IMG artists. And two very, very important parts of Tim's vision and plan that we are working on are the affiliates program and the International Arts Academy. And the affiliates program is a way in which the Victory Theater reaches out and MIFA reaches out to local arts organizations that exist and could exist and offers a way not only through our mentorship but on a very basic level, if an organization wants to have a large-scale production that acts as a benefit, etc., we would provide the platform for that. And we're doing that. We've initiated both of those programs. The International Arts Academy is focused on music and invites, through application, a group of musicians to come and do a 2-week residency in Holyoke and to then present a project publicly, but also to work as mentors in the Holyoke schools and also in surrounding schools. And I'm very proud to say that we've initiated both of those parts of this strategy last year with the establishment of the International Arts Academy, and we did a project called El Puerto Rico, the second part of which will happen this coming June. And the affiliates program we have initiated by mentoring and really looking very seriously at the formation of the Palante Theater, which is a Puerto Rican and Latinx-based theater that is in Holyoke on Main Street. And we've had 2 presentations last season, La Gringa, a wonderful show from the Urban Theater of Chicago, and just finished bringing in the Pregones and Puerto Rican Traveling Company in dancing in my cockroach killers. So the idea being that the theater, of course, it's 1,600 seats, so it's not right for everything, but that it does act as a stimulant to the production of theater, the excitement of theater, the reality of theater as something which is needed. And I think having a theater that will be bringing in examples of works from all over the world it stimulates people, and it makes people who want to create theater locally. I think it acts as a kind of energy source. And I have to say, just as an aside, Mark, doing this project, I have become even more absolutely convinced of the power of theater. It is so hard to do, and it is so demanding, and exists under such unconventional circumstances in terms of a business model. And I mean, it's wonderful. Earlier, Danny Eaton's The Majestic Theater is an example that people want theater, and it's just a very powerful expression of our. It all this sounds like it's been said before, but I'm more and more convinced of it. It is such a necessity for a healthy community and a healthy cultural life.
I would certainly second that. And, we're so fortunate here in Western Massachusetts having access to Broadway in Boston,
yes.
Of course. But what's going on in Hartford with the theaters there and the Berkshires and here in the Valley, it used to be maybe 20 years ago, you'd go, where could I go this weekend? And now there's a choice. Which of the following 10 things can I do this weekend? And we've sort of reinvented Western Massachusetts as an arts community, one big arts community, because there's so many different venues and performing groups. When you started MIFA and you began presenting here, you were presenting in a variety of venues up and down the valley. When the Victory is open, are you going to restrict what MIFA does to the Victory, or are you going to continue to explore other theaters around?
We're going to continue to explore others. And when we engaged in the strategic plan, it came back saying that we should focus on the community that we had chosen as a home, and that became Holyoke, and on setting that up, but also that when that began to get steady on its feet, we could continue to do programming in other venues, and we've actually started that. We've begun by doing. We did a program on the 50th anniversary of Titicut Follies, which we did at the Amherst Cinema, and so we are interested in looking at other venues, for the right size programming, etc.
You mentioned the Amherst Cinema. When the Victory is renovated, will it be able to show movies again?
Yes, it will be, absolutely. And it's going to have state-of-the-art movie capability. It will be more in a kind of a festival format, etc., because having been on the board of the Amherst Cinema for 10 years, the issue, of course, with first-run films is that is really determined by the distributors. You can't. It's very hard to schedule other kinds of events if you have, a movie that has, in essence, an unlimited run, or the limitation of the run or the timing of the run is determined by how long it is actually selling tickets. So that's a particular kind of niche, but we will have movie capability.
And with the renovation, you say the ability to bring in a Broadway show.
Yes.
Are you talking about the bus and truck kind of shows that play the Hanover and Worcester, or are you talking about the blockbusters that play the Bushnell?
We're going to be open to whatever is great product, but I have to say that we are looking much more at the tier that is Broadway across America, or the grade A tours.
Because I would assume it would be difficult to sustain a show like Wicked at the Victory, which requires a 2 or 3 week run, and I'm not sure that the market can take that at this point. Although maybe down the road. And I also would the Victory be able to handle a show as large, let's say, as Phantom of the Opera?
The question, and getting back to the size of shows, yes. I mean, the Victory, its stage size, etc., and technical capacity, probably the only shows that are, not that anybody's going to revive Spider-Man.
No, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
There are some that might be certain create challenges. But what's happened in the Broadway touring phenomenon, and it keeps evolving, honestly, it was very interesting talking to the folks at the Colonial, because, of course, the Ambassador Theater Group is the largest owner of theaters in the world and presenter of live entertainment. So interesting talking to Erica Lynn Schwartz, who's the general manager there, about the array of product available, because the statistics, as you're probably aware of, on Broadway, in the Broadway district of New York, have just been, it have just astonished everybody, the number of people who are going to shows. But that has also spawned an increase in the sophistication of the touring business. And so there are ways in which different shows, which might seem only right for the size of the Winter Garden or those size theaters, can actually go into a smaller house like the Victory, but with the same artistic integrity.
I've noticed some of the touring shows that come to the Bushnell. Because I happen to cover the Bushnell, and the play that goes wrong, which Danny and I were chatting about in the first half hour, is a big hit on Broadway. That fit into the Bushnell, but sometimes I'm astounded at, like, the Lion King that was at the Bushnell. I can't picture that playing in other venues just because of the scope of it. And the people at the Bushnell said, "Well, you can't bring a show like this in for just a week because it takes a week to set it up."
Correct.
So I'm wondering if, the Hanover and Worcester is about the same size as the Victory, and
actually it's bigger. But
it
anyhow,
is.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yes.
But
in terms of seating size, it's 20. I'm going to say 21 to 2,300 seats.
Yeah, but I think that 1,600 seats is what the Broadway touring houses used to
Yes.
be. So
Yes, exactly.
it does have a viable future.
Yes, it does. And what I was saying is that the per show touring component, we're seeing many more. Well, the play that went wrong is a good example of that, and also something like Come From Away, which is going to go on tour. All these shows are adjusting in sizes. And can adjust in sizes much more. I mean, obviously, the Lion King, well, for example, which ran basically on a Broadway run at the Opera House in Boston. Those are slightly different situations, but I really am convinced by what I'm being presented with, that there's going to be a really attractive array of, from the Broadway standpoint, array of shows available for the Victory.
Don, before we go,
Sure.
if people want to learn more about the Victory Theater or Massachusetts International Festival of the Arts, where can they get information?
They can go to MIFA.org.
Okay. And does MIFA have any performances up and coming in the next couple of weeks?
So, very exciting. Along with the affiliates program that I was talking about, we are co-sponsoring performances of In the Heights, which is a production at Holyoke Community College, and it's a wonderful combination of students, but also of local performers with a full orchestra, and that'll be a lot of fun, and it's on for 2 weekends. So that is coming up, and would love to encourage people to check that out. It actually opens on the 8th of November and runs through the 2 weekends, and that can be, tickets for that are through the Leslie Phillips Theater at Holyoke Community College.
Terrific.
And then we are doing as part of the Palante Theater that we had just done the Cockroach Killers. We're doing Four Guys Named Jose, a wonderful, wonderful off-Broadway musical, which is fairly self-explanatory, Four Guys Named Jose, and that's coming up in February. So you can get information about both of those productions on our website. And also then in May, we are continuing our relationship with One Holyoke and bringing in The Crucible with the National Players. And in June, we are doing the second half of the El Puerto Rico project, and those dates are all online.
Go to MIFA.org. And again, Don, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Always
Mark.
great
Thank
having
you.
A chance to chat about the Victory. You'll have to come back and give us a progress report.
I absolutely will.
Okay.
I certainly will.
Next week on Artsbeat Radio, John Montanari from formerly of WFCR, be talking about the Valley Classical Concerts. Deborah J. Anthony from the Academy of Music in Northampton will be here to talk about some of the programming there. And we leave you today with a song rendition by Postmodern Jukebox, all about the bass. Postmodern Jukebox is on its way to the Mahawi Theater in Great Barrington, so they're just a terrific band, and I think you'll enjoy this. This is Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our engineer, and you're listening to 89.5 FM WSKB.
Underwriting for community radio is provided by the YMCA of Greater Westfield. Every day, the YMCA strengthens the community through programs and services focused on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. For all the Y's many programs and services, visit us on the web at www.westfieldymca.org. The YMCA, 67 Court Street in downtown Westfield. We're more than a gym. We're a cause.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental.